Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back. Nice to have you with us. And I'm going to play a fun concert for you tonight. This weekend's performance is entitled A Tribute to Walt Disney. And I think I mentioned that I wanted to do this again. This is only the second time I've done this, and I have long loved the music from Disney movies, Disney TV shows, even Disneyland, the theme parks, and so forth. A lot of the music in those days was still written by the old Tin Pan Alley songwriters, so it's very much in line with the style of music that I normally play. And I hope it'll be half as fun for all of you as it will be for me. First up, the original theme song from the Mickey Mouse shorts, written by a man named Carl Stalling in 1930. It's called Minnie's Yoo-Hoo. Thank you very much. Minnie's Yoo-Hoo. Maybe you recognize that melody from the old Mickey Mouse cartoons. Of course, that wasn't written until 1930, so a few of the very earliest shorts did not include that music as the theme song, but it was used for many years later. And I did come up with some music to play that I did not do during my last Disney concert, so there will be some different things for those of you that are regular listeners. And one of the things that I thought about doing is playing some of the music from Steamboat Willie. The very first Mickey Mouse cartoon came out in 1928. It just went into the public domain January 1st of this year. And there are some old tunes in that cartoon, one of which is an old ragtime number written by the Leighton brothers, the guys who published the first version of Frankie and Johnny way back in 1910. It's called Steamboat Bill, hence the title of the cartoon, Steamboat Willie. So I'll play Steamboat Bill for you, and with it a couple of choruses of Turkey in the Straw, since that is also in the cartoon. A little tribute to Steamboat Willie now. Thank you very much. Steamboat Bill from the Mickey Mouse cartoon Steamboat Willie. I suppose it's important to mention that Walt Disney clearly knew the value of music. He had really top-notch musicians that worked for him, and music was an important feature in almost all of his cartoons and movies and his other ventures as well. And so, let's see, what's next on the list? Well, the early cartoons had a lot of ragtime era songs in a Maple Leaf Rag. Scott Joplin is in one of the Mickey Mouse cartoons, so is Frankie and Johnny, and a number of other tunes like that, St. Louis Blues. But then in the early 1930s, Walt developed a series called the Silly Symphonies, which were cartoons, Technicolor cartoons, that were all based around music. In fact, there was an enormous hit song written for the Silly Symphonies, 1933, music by Frank Churchill, who later wrote, I think he wrote the music for Snow White. Yes, he did. But additional lyrics were also written for this by Anne Rennell, who was a popular lady composer of the era. I'm not sure exactly how much Anne Rennell had to do with this, but she's known for this song. She also wrote Willow Weep for Me. And here's the original cover of the sheet music, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? I'm going to play that for you next. This is the American edition of the sheet music. And I have spent a lot of time and money the last few years collecting Disney sheet music. And I thought I would show you this little treasure. This is the cover of the Australian edition of Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf. I think it almost has better artwork, don't you? When I saw this, I just couldn't live without it. So now let's do, from the Three Little Pigs, Walt Disney's famous Silly Symphony, we'll do Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? Well, thank you, folks, and almost up to 100 listeners already. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'll be happy to take as many requests as I can. although I have practiced a lot of music in advance for tonight's concert since I'm doing a little bit of a challenging theme for the performance. But I bet I can get in some requests for you. In fact, I bet I'm already planning to play some of the famous Disney songs that I will get requests for. Now, if you enjoy this kind of music, I do accept virtual tips for these performances. All you have to do is send in a tip on PayPal or Venmo. The information is in the chat and the postings on all three websites. Feed the birds. Oh yes, I'll be doing all my Mary Poppins tunes at the very end of the concert. So you have to stick around. Don't forget to hit the like button and share my concerts on social media. If you enjoy this kind of music, it's very helpful to me. Well, like I said, I'm going to do the Mary Poppins songs at the very end of the concert, so you have to stick around for that. Sometimes I kind of like to go chronologically through the history of the music, and so that's exactly what we're going to do next. I'm going to do a medley from Walt Disney's first full-length motion picture called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In fact, it was the first full-length animated feature ever made. People called it Disney's Folly, but it ended up being a huge hit, and the movie was released in 1937, had a bunch of wonderful songs in it. I'm going to play 4 of the songs for you. Here's the original sheet music cover. During the earliest period in the 30s, Irving Berlin was Walt Disney's music publisher. And later on, Disney realized he could make more money if he controlled his own music. A side note that's kind of neat about Snow White, one of the neatest stories I've heard about this movie. This was a big deal when this came out in 1937. And Johnny Maddox, the piano player that I worked with for so many years, he would have been about 10 years old when this movie came out. And he told me that it was such a big deal, they let them all out of school in Tennessee to see this movie in the movie theater. That would have been 1937 or thereabouts. So now here's 4 of the tunes. We're going to do Hi Ho, Whistle While You Work, Someday My Prince Will Come, and end with the beautiful ballad One Song from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Thank you very much. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. At least that's a couple of the great songs written for that movie. And I know I said this the last time I played these Disney songs, but of the original classic animated movies, I think Pinocchio might be my favorite. It really has incredible artwork and music. And so let me do a few of the Pinocchio songs for you now. I've only ever played 3 of them, and so that's what we're going to do next. When You Wish Upon a Star, of course, won the Academy Award for Best Song. Pinocchio came out in 1940. The music was written by Lee Harline and lyrics by Ned Washington, who were what you might call Tin Pan Alley composers of the time, 1930s and 40s, pop songwriters. We're going to do Give a Little Whistle, Hi Diddly Dee, An Actor's Life for Me, and then finally When You Wish Upon a Star. Of course, Cliff Edwards was the voice of Jiminy Cricket. I think Cliff Edwards is highly underrated. He was the great star who was called Ukulele Ike in the 1920s. I don't think he gets enough credit. Anyhow, here's a little Pinocchio medley. Thank you so much. Pinocchio. That's a classic if there ever was one. Well, let me see if there's any requests here. Oh yeah, Cliff Edwards was the first one to introduce Singing in the Rain. He was also the voice of Jiminy Cricket. Well, let me see. I see a request here for music from Bambi. I don't know any of the Bambi songs, but I can come pretty close. I think this movie was made within about a year of Bambi. I'll do 2 of the songs from Dumbo. Now, there were 6 songs, I think, written for the movie. Only 3 of the songs from Dumbo were published in the United States. And one of them is one of these songs. Casey Jr., the song about the circus train, which I've loved since I was a little kid. That was only ever published in England. I have the British music of that. And there were others, but I'm going to play Casey Jr. for you, and then When I See an Elephant Fly, a couple of the classics from Disney's Dumbo. One of his animated movies came out about 1941, I believe. I think Bambi was 42. Anyhow, here's my 2 Dumbo songs. very much. Well, that's about it for the movies of the late 30s and early 40s, what are really the classic Disney animated features. But of course I'll do some that go into later decades, songs from the 50s and 60s tonight. I'm reading some of the requests here. Yes, I'm going to play one of the songs from Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, there's great songs from Lady and the Tramp. I think Peggy Lee wrote some of those songs. Well, why don't I kind of do things out of order here? I got a request on YouTube for songs from Sleeping Beauty. I've only ever played this one. I have the original sheet music out here to show you. That's what the music cover looked like from Sleeping Beauty. And this is a gorgeous melody called Once Upon a Dream, written, this is in the early 50s, 1952. Lyrics and music by Sammy Fain and Jack Lawrence, but adapted from a theme by Tchaikovsky. It's Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty. They borrowed a little bit of his melody for this. This is also the song that you hear if you're in Fantasyland at the King Arthur carousel. It should be familiar to a lot of you. Here we go with Once Upon a Dream from Sleeping Beauty. Once Upon a Dream. Thank you very much. Had to include that one because it wouldn't be much of a Disney concert without something from Sleeping Beauty. Now let's go back a few years to 1946, and I'd like to play for you one of the most famous songs from Disney films. This one won the Academy Award either in 1946 or 47. Depends on what time of the year the movie came out, I suppose. And music by Ali Rubel, lyrics written by Ray Gilbert. Here is the original sheet music cover of Zippity-Doo-Dah. Again, in some cases, especially songs from movies like this, the British and Australian sheet music covers were actually a little bit better. I think they were in this case. But I'm going to use the music here and play the original verse for you to this song as well, which you hardly ever hear. Now, here from Disney's Song of the South, a picture that I happen to like, Zippity-Doo-Dah. At least a short version of the tune. Well, what other requests do we have? Folks, go ahead and send them on in. Depending on what requests I get online, I might change the order of tunes I'm going to play, and so forth and so on. Only got 35 listeners here on Facebook. Oh, got quite a few on Twitch tonight. I guess Kylan De Cataldi is listening on Twitch, and sometimes he'll raid my stream and help bring in some people. I sure appreciate that tonight, pal. Oh yeah, I'm taking requests. I prefer if it kind of relates to the theme. I don't know the music from Winnie the Pooh. I may play that eventually. That was written by the Sherman Brothers, and towards the end of the concert, there'll be an entire Sherman Brothers section for tonight's performance. I see a request here from Leo Roth. I might go ahead and play your tune tonight, Leo. This is only fits in a cursory way. It's not really Disney, but he just asked me to play a piano novelty written by Zez Confrey. And I'll go ahead and do that for you because this was featured in a cartoon that was created by a man who worked for Walt Disney. His name was Ub Iwerks. I assume that's how you pronounce it. It might be Ub Iwerks, spelled U-B-I-W-E-R-K-S. Anyway, he was one of Walt Disney's early partners, a fantastic animator. And so here is Buffoon, because this Zez Confrey piece was featured in a cartoon that he made called, it's called Balloon Land. It's quite strange, the beginning of the cartoon where you hear this music. The Pincushion Man attacks Balloon Land. And it's a great piece. I'll play it for you since Leo requested that. Let's do it. Buffoon. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, definitely cartoon music, early 30s. I got another request for Bambi. No, about as close as I can get to that is the music from Dumbo, which I just played. Like I said, that's about it for the real classic feature-length movies. Some of the other things I'm going to do later are different, like songs from the theme parks. I will do Mary Poppins towards the end of the concert. Let's do something from one of the Disney TV shows. And when he was first creating Disneyland in the mid-50s, he created a TV show to go with it. And one of the most popular shows, well, there were a whole lot of different shows within the Disneyland TV show, different sketches and different, like TV movies. And the most popular one was probably Davey Crockett. And so here's one of the songs from Davey Crockett. This is the sheet music cover. And this is a real pretty ballad called Farewell, the words of which are based on, it's like a poem or a letter that was actually written by Davey Crockett himself. Music by George Bruns, who was a very talented songwriter and orchestra leader that worked for Disney. The copyright date on this is 1954. And of course, I'm going to play Farewell and then follow that up immediately with the Ballad of Davey Crockett. There were a number of hit records of the Ballad of Davey Crockett. The one that was the biggest hit of all was sung by a man named Bill Hayes, and he just passed away not that long ago. He had the biggest record of the Ballad of Davey Crockett in 1955. Billy Hayes was in Broadway shows. He was in Me and Juliet, the Rodgers and Hammerstein show, and Johnny had known him back in the 50s. So I wrote him a letter and got a real nice letter from, Johnny called him Billy Hayes. He must have gone by that name in the 50s. And later on, he became a huge star on the TV show Days of Our Lives. So that's a little bit more about Davey Crockett. Here's two tunes from the TV show. Thank you very much. Davey Crockett, the famous Ballad of Davey Crockett. Side note, there's a family legend that my grandfather Herman, my mom's dad, was born in a cabin built by Davey Crockett himself. He grew up on a ranch in Novice, Texas with 8 brothers and sisters, and they found in the mortar of the cabin D. Crockett, 1836. The story goes that they sent that part of the cabin to Texas Tech University for authentication, and they never got it back. So I can't really prove it, but I have heard people say it would make sense because Davy Crockett would have been in that part of central west Texas on his way to the Alamo that same year. So that's kind of a special family story. I'd like to play a couple of player piano rolls for you now. And last time I did this concert, I played, I think, a piano roll at Mickey Mouse's birthday party. I'm going to do something completely different this time and play a couple of piano rolls made by the legendary Disneyland pianist Rod Miller. And I've been fortunate to have known Rod since I was about 16 years old. My mom and I had dinner with him when we went to Disneyland once, but I never knew him when he was working there. He's been retired for a long time. Rod played at Disneyland from 1969 to about 2005, 36 years. And he's got some amazing stories about playing for everyone from Louis Armstrong and Pearl Bailey to Barbra Streisand, and all those people used to sit by the piano with him at Disneyland. He was the only full-time piano player they ever hired at Disneyland. All of the others have been part-time in one way or another. Rod's the only one that got benefits and all that of a career playing ragtime piano at Disneyland, and I think he was the perfect person for the job. His style is just very happy, and he just played by ear. And in the 1970s, he made a whole bunch of piano rolls for the Playwright Music Roll label, and he told me that he made something like 20 piano rolls for them, and he never got paid for it. So I don't know that he was real happy about that, but I love his style. I enjoy it, and I'm going to play 2 of his piano rolls for you, actually. I've got 10 or 12 of them now. I had him autograph a few of them, and this one is the old famous Tiger Rag, but it's kind of odd. Like I said, he plays by ear, and so he's playing the Tiger Rag starting out in the key of C. I've never heard anybody do that. So it's unique. Let's listen to Rod Miller now play Tiger Rag. Kind of a wild tiger rag. I do treasure my friendship with Rod. He says he really just doesn't play anymore, but I talk to him on the phone 2 or 3 times a year, and I had him autograph these piano rolls. You could probably barely see it on there, but yeah, he's got wonderful stories. He started at Disneyland in 1969, and at the time he worked there, although he never met Walt Disney, at the time he started playing there, everyone that worked there had known Walt personally, and he's got these great stories. He also played at the Coconut Grove nightclub in Southern California. He told me about playing private parties for Lucille Ball at her home, and I think this next piano roll shows off Rod's abilities a little bit better, actually. I just discovered this, and I loved his version of this song. It's an old standard called The Birth of the Blues. And here's Rod Miller's Playwright Piano Roll. Copyright date is 1978, I think. Must be when he made this. And I assume I have some new listeners once in a while. I sure hope so. And just in case you're wondering about it, this is a 1913 Apollo player piano. The Apollo has a dynamic control here. I don't use it a whole lot on pieces, piano rolls that don't really require a lot of dynamics, but it is very nice to have the ability to create that expression on this piano. Birth of the Blues, played by Rod Miller, great Disneyland pianist. Birth of the Blues. Well, I thought it'd be fun to play a couple of those piano rolls that Rod made for you. He only made about 2 recordings. He made an LP and a CD years later, 2 or 3 recordings, and so I'd really love to find more of his piano rolls. I'm sure there's more out there. Once in a great while, one pops up on eBay. Well, I sure appreciate all of you listening tonight, and even though I just played some piano rolls, I will remind you that I do accept virtual tips for these concerts. If you enjoy the music, want to help me make a career out of this, just a small donation really helps when I do these online concerts. There's both PayPal and Venmo information in the postings. It should be pinned in the chat on all three websites. And if you don't trust PayPal, I have a P.O. box on my website for checks too. While I'm doing a little commercial here, I might as well mention as well, I will be doing a virtual concert next Sunday, but I'm going to have to switch it around a little bit. We're getting to the summer season now where I'm kind of busy, and I have a local engagement that's going to prevent me from doing a virtual concert at the time that I normally do it. So I think what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to do it earlier in the afternoon. So you all will have to remember to tune in on these websites at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Mountain Time, next Sunday. So that'd be 2 o'clock here, that'd be 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the West Coast in California, that would be 3 o'clock Central Time, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. I think doing it a little bit earlier in the afternoon should work out. I think that's hopefully a little bit a better choice than doing it late in the evening where it'd be almost midnight on the East Coast for those of you that live there. So I hope you'll listen next week. I'm not sure exactly what I'll do for the concert. I was thinking it might be time to do another concert of contemporary ragtime, devote some time to that. I'm not 100% sure yet, but just tune in next Sunday to find out. And I will try to continue doing at least 2 virtual concerts a month throughout the summer season. I cannot do every week either because I have some kind of local engagement or during the summer season at the Diamond Bell Saloon where I play here in Durango, I do work 6 nights a week, and 7 nights a week of piano playing for a whole month at a time is just a little too much for me. So I will try and get 2 in every month, though. It may be somewhat sporadic. I'll always announce it on Facebook and try and announce it ahead of time during the actual concerts. So I hope that works. Next week's concert will be a little bit earlier in the afternoon than usual. And shortly after that, I'll be going to the World Championship Old Time Piano Playing Contest and Festival. I'll be emceeing the contest. I'll be doing silent movies there as usual. That's at Oxford, Mississippi. And then I'll be heading off to the Scott Joplin International Ragtime Festival in Sedalia, Missouri. For those of you that love old music, please consider coming to these events. These 2 events in particular helped give me my start, and I like to support them. This is the 50th anniversary for both of these events. And at Sedalia, I will be playing in several of the concerts, as well as doing a seminar on one of my favorite recording artists, Al Bernard, who made hundreds and hundreds of records in the 1920s and 30s. So if you want to learn about him, come to the seminar in Sedalia too. And I think that's just about it for the announcements. Well, I know what I want to do next. I mentioned that I'd play a bunch of the music of the Sherman brothers, who were the brilliant songwriters that worked from Walt Disney from about 1960 through the time that Disney died into the early 70s. They kept writing for Disney movies until shortly after Walt died, and that involved a lot of really great movies. However, I don't think many people know that the Sherman brothers' father, Al Sherman, was one of the Tin Pan Alley songwriters back in the 1920s. And I have learned a number of his songs, and even though it's not Disney, I thought it would be fun to play those for you tonight. I know I have done my Al Sherman medley for you before, but I'm going to add on another tune that I don't usually play. I'm going to do, I think, about 4 of Al's songs. I'm going to do his first big hit from 1925 called Save Your Sorrow for Tomorrow. And then one of his cute tunes from the late 20s called What Do We Do on a Do-Do-Dooey Day. A whole bunch of Al Sherman songs have I think it's called alliteration in the title. What do we do on a Do-Do-Dooey Day? And then we'll do Al's big hit of the Great Depression from the early 30s. Potatoes are cheaper, tomatoes are cheaper, now's the time to fall in love, which was introduced by Eddie Cantor. And then I'm going to tag on, You Gotta Be a Football Hero to Get Along with the Beautiful Girls. That was one of his other hits of the early 30s. So here's a little tribute to the Sherman Brothers' dad, who was a brilliant songwriter. I have a huge box full of his music that I've been collecting now for years. Here is my Al Sherman medley. by the brilliant tunesmith Al Sherman. I'm still finding music that he wrote. He must have wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs. My latest acquisition is a song that he wrote in the 1950s that was recorded by Joe Finger's Car, the honky-tonk piano revivalist in the 50s. Al Sherman was still a successful songwriter at that time, and found a tune that he wrote. Al Sherman, he wrote for Lou Bush, who was Joe Finger's Car. So I know many of you that have listened to my performances before have probably heard me mention I did have the thrill of meeting Richard Sherman, and it's been about 12 years ago, 13 years ago now, and I was very lucky. Ian Whitcomb had known Richard for years, just called him on the phone for me, and I got to go over to his house, and I talked to him a lot about his dad and Disney too, of course, and I got to play for him on the piano that he wrote the songs for Mary Poppins on. And just at the last minute, as I was leaving the house, I realized I better get pictures with him, and he had the brilliant idea. He had his Oscars for Mary Poppins on the mantle on the fireplace, and I got pictures there with Richard. He is probably my favorite living songwriter. You can't forget his brother Robert, who passed away a number of years ago, but Richard is about 95 or 96 now. He's very much like his dad. He's one of the old Jewish Tin Pan Alley songwriters, and he's probably my favorite living songwriter because his music is loved all over the world by so many people, and he was also just the nicest guy I've ever met. So, not only did he write for movies, but the Sherman Brothers wrote for a number of attractions at Disneyland, and I think I'll do those for you first. 60 years ago this year, Disney created 4 brilliant attractions for the New York World's Fair, 1964, and the Sherman Brothers wrote music for these things, and I'm going to play 2 of the songs for you now as a medley. We'll do There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow from the Carousel of Progress, and of course the famous It's a Small World After All, and hopefully that tune doesn't get stuck in everybody's head for a week. If it does, come back next Sunday and I'll play some other tunes and you can get rid of it. Thank you very much. Okay, now some more music by the wonderful Sherman Brothers. I have been collecting the music of the Sherman Brothers, trying to find every song I can find ever since I met Richard. And there have been a lot of rare songs written by the Sherman Brothers in Wayland Bundles sheet music auctions lately. Now, if any of you are bidding against me, please don't, because I will win. I'm just joking, folks. Well, that's how much I love their music. And it is hard, you'd be surprised, it is hard to find some of the songs they wrote for movies in the 1960s. Because by then rock and roll had taken over and the piano music was not selling as much. And one of the songs that I've never been able to find, I have it in books, but I don't have the original sheet music, that was published at Disneyland, is the song from the Enchanted Tiki Room. And I know it was published, and the only way I know it was published is because I asked Richard about it. He said, oh yeah, all those things were published. Miracles from Molecules, from The Adventure Through Inner Space, which used to be at Tomorrowland. He said all those songs were published, but I've never been able to find them. I've got a half a mind to write him a letter and say, hey, gee, Richard, would you mind making me a copy? Because I still can't find these things. Anyhow, I have never played these Tiki Room song, but we're going to do it right now. Now, I know this might be a bit much for those of you who are not as much Disney fanatics as me and my family, but I hope you will get a kick out of this. If you've ever been to Disneyland, and it's the same at Disney World in Florida, the Enchanted Tiki Room is this wonderful attraction with audio animatronic birds, and aside from the birds, which are wonderful, it's really more about the music that they sing and play. And it just so happens that I know almost all of the songs from that attraction by heart. So I'm going to play them for you now. We're going to do the Tiki Room song by the Sherman Brothers, and then Offenbach's Barcarolle from the operetta Tales of Hoffmann, and then the birds sing a song called Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing, which they said, oh, well, this is our national anthem. And it's a cute song. It's actually a British song from the 1930s, written by Ian Whitcomb's uncle, who was a songwriter in England. And we'll do Let's All Sing Like the Birdies Sing, and then the finale of the show is the Hawaiian War Chant, which was written in part in the late 30s by Johnny Noble, a Hawaiian songwriter. And then they all send you out of the attraction singing, hi ho, it's off to work we go. So I might even do a chorus of that. Here is my brand new Enchanted Tiki Room medley. much, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that little bit of crazy music from Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. I hope some of you recognize the songs, and it looks like a lot of you do know these tunes. I've never heard the Spike Jones version of Hawaiian War Chant. That'd be fun, even if you haven't been on the ride. It's not a ride per se, it's more of an attraction. You know, you sit in the theater and the birds sing and dance and play. So anyhow, I thought that'd be fun. Now let me move on from the music from the attractions at Disneyland and play some of the Sherman Brothers movie music for you. And the first one that I want to do is a song that was written for one of the Haley Mills movies. You know, she was one of the Disney queens in the 60s. And I love her movies because like many of the films during the golden age of Hollywood, they're ragtime era movies. And perhaps this movie is not that well remembered. It's called Summer Magic, Haley Mills and Burl Ives. Again, this is the British edition of this song, and I'm showing you this because the American edition has nothing whatsoever on the cover. It just has the title and like pink background and white lettering. And so this is the tune, The Ugly Bug Ball, probably the most familiar tune from the movie Summer Magic, Haley Mills and Burl Ives, 1963. It even says right here on the sheet music, medium ragtime tempo. The Ugly Bug Ball. Ugly Bug Ball. Thank you very much. I wish I had known more of the Sherman Brothers music to play for Richard at the time that I met him. I was only 19 years old. I think the only two I knew was There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow from the Carousel of Progress and It's a Small World. But I also played some of his dad's songs for him. Well, you know, it's almost 7:30 here in Durango, Colorado already, which means that it might be time for the Mary Poppins medley before I get to the end of the concert. And this is not all of the songs from the movie, but it's all of the famous ones. I've not committed them all to memory yet, but I still have all of the sheet music in the binder from the last time I did this for a virtual concert. So we're going to do the wonderful songs from the Sherman Brothers' most famous movie, also starring Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke. Considering the movie was made in 1963, it's pretty incredible that one of the songwriters and both of the main stars of the movie are still with us. We're going to do A Spoonful of Sugar, A Jolly Holiday, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, Feed the Birds, which was supposedly Walt Disney's favorite song himself, and then Chim Chim Cheree, which is the one that won the Academy Award, 1963, and wind up the whole thing with Let's Go Fly a Kite. One of the wonderful things about this music, of course, Richard's music is always tuneful. It has harmonies that are easy to understand. I'm not sure how much Robert really wrote as far as the music goes. I think they both, collaborated together on music and lyrics. It's my understanding Robert was a little bit more of the lyricist. Richard was a little bit more of the composer. They tried to do this, some of it, in the style of the old-time English music hall. The British music hall was a counterpart to American vaudeville. And so they're very charming songs. Let's start now and do my Mary Poppins medley. Thank you very much. Mary Poppins, the one and only, probably Disney's greatest masterpiece, at least in real film, not animation. I hope you've all enjoyed the music tonight. I really appreciate you listening. And I'm going to do one more piece for you. This is one of the oldest pieces of ragtime music ever discovered. In fact, the manuscript only turned up about 5 years ago. The date on it was 1802. It's a very historic piece of music, one of the earliest syncopated piano pieces. And the composer's name on the manuscript was kind of hard to discern. It was something like L. Beethoven or Beethoven, that's it, Beethoven. Previously undiscovered piece of ragtime by Beethoven himself. This is called L'Ouverture de la Grande Rodent. Thank you so much. L'Ouverture de la Grande Rodent. I thank you all again for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this. I know it's a little different. I do like to prove that I play a lot of music besides ragtime, but I'll probably go back to a little bit more ragtime-centric concert next week. And remember, it's going to be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon Mountain Time. That's, what is that, about 4 hours earlier than normal. And I hope you will all be able to listen next week just the same. Thank you also for the virtual tips, and good night for now.